When they send you to die in the snow, you're not supposed to fight back. Lena Virik was meant to freeze, meant to vanish, meant to become one more nameless corpse buried under the northern ice. But when a dying werewolf, pregnant, poisoned, bearing the king's own mark, collapsed bleeding at her door, she made the choice that would shatter a kingdom. She dragged it inside. What happened next wasn't mercy. It was war. If you want to see how one exiled healer brought an empire to its knees, stay until the end. Drop a like, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, and let's begin. The wind didn't howl in the Frostmark. It screamed. Lena had stopped hearing it as sound years ago. Now it was just texture, sharp, abrasive, constant. It scraped against the stone walls of her cabin like claws testing for weakness, found none, and moved on. The fire in the hearth popped and hissed, throwing restless shadows across shelves packed with dried herbs, glass vials, and things she'd salvaged from the frozen dead who'd come before her. She sat cross-legged on the floor, stitching a tear in her cloak with thread she'd pulled from a merchant's coat last spring. The merchant had been dead 3 days when she found him. The coat had been good quality. Waste was a sin out here, though nobody left alive cared much about sin. The needle slipped. Blood welled on her thumb. Damn it! She sucked the wound clean and kept working. Her hands were scarred, burn marks from cauterizing tools, thin white lines from scalpel slips, one crooked finger that had healed wrong after she'd set it herself. Healer's hands, someone had called them once, back when she'd been someone, back when her name had meant something other than exile. That life was ash now. The Frostmark had a way of burning everything down to what mattered. Out here, at the ragged northern edge of the Draven Kingdom, you didn't need a past. You needed firewood. You needed to know which roots were edible and which would stop your heart in under a minute. You needed to be able to gut a rabbit without thinking and sleep light enough to hear wolves before they found your door. Lena had learned. She finished the stitch, bit the thread clean, and stood. Her knees cracked. 31 years old and her body already sounded like kindling. She moved to the window, just a narrow slit cut into stone, shuttered with warped wood, and peered out into the dark. Snow. Always snow. The storm had been building for 2 days, the kind that turned the world into white static and made breathing feel like drowning. She'd triple-checked her stores, enough dried meat for 3 weeks if she rationed, enough grain for 2. The roof was solid, the door was barred. She'd survive. That was the bitter joke of the Frostmark. You always survive just long enough to keep suffering. She let the shutter fall and turned back to the fire. The cabin was small, one room, maybe 15 feet across, stone walls thick enough to hold back the cold, but never quite warm. A bed in one corner, more wood than mattress. A table she'd built herself from salvaged planks. Shelves crammed with her tools, her medicines, the remnants of a profession she'd once practiced in clean white rooms with assistance and respect. Now she practiced it alone. Now she practiced it on herself. The scar on her left shoulder itched. She rolled it, felt the tight pull of poorly healed tissue. That had been a bad winter, an infection that should have killed her. She'd lanced it herself, packed it with moss and yarrow, and somehow didn't die. Infections were like that in the Frostmark, 50-50 odds, and you only got one roll. She'd gotten lucky. Most didn't. Lena added another log to the fire and watched sparks spiral up toward the smoke hole in the ceiling. Somewhere beyond the storm, beyond the endless white, the kingdom continued. The capital with its golden spires and paved streets. The markets, the academies. The life she'd been ripped from 5 years ago when they decided she was too inconvenient to keep around. You're being reassigned, they'd said. The Northern Territories need experienced medical staff. Lies. All of it. They'd sent her here to disappear. She'd refused to give them the satisfaction. Lena poured herself the cup of pine needle tea, bitter, medicinal, but it kept the scurvy away, and settled back on the floor. The fire crackled. The wind howled. Same as every night. And that's when she heard it. Not the wind, not the usual groan of ice settling or branches snapping under snow weight. A sound. Deliberate. Heavy. Thud. Her hand went to the knife on her belt before she'd even processed the thought. The blade was old, the handle wrapped in leather she'd replaced twice, but the edge was sharp enough to split bone. She'd tested it on a deer carcass last week. Thud. Closer. Something was outside, something big. Lena set down the tea and stood slowly, every muscle tensing. Wolves didn't approach cabins, not unless they were starving or rabid. Bears were asleep this deep into winter. Bandits wouldn't come this far north for a place this worthless. Thud. Scrape. The sound of something dragging itself. She moved to the door, knife ready, and pressed her ear to the wood. The fire dimmed behind her, throwing her shadow long across the floor. Breathing, ragged, wet. Then a sound that made her blood stop. A low, rattling whine, almost human in its desperation. Hell! She should have stayed inside. That was the smart play. That was survival. But Lena Virek had been sent to the Frostmark because she'd never been smart enough to let people die when she could save them. She lifted the bar. The wood was cold enough to burn her palms. The door swung inward, and the storm tried to rip it from her hands. Snow blasted her face, blinding, and the cold hit like a fist to the chest. She squinted into the chaos, scanning the ground, one hand shielding her eyes. At first she didn't see it. Then the shape moved. Massive, black fur matted with ice and something darker, something that steamed in the frozen air. Forelegs splayed, head down, ribs heaving like a bellows. A werewolf. Not a wild wolf. Not some scrawny forest predator scraping by on rabbits in desperation. A werewolf, the kind bred for battle, standing tall as a man's chest, trained to kill in formation and answer only to the royal handlers. The kind that cost more than a year's salary for a common soldier. The kind you saw in parades, sleek and deadly, symbols of the kingdom's power. And it was dying. Lena's mind went cold and sharp, the way it always did when things got bad. Professional detachment, clinical observation. The wolf's side was streaked with black, not blood, something else. Poison. She could smell it even through the storm, bitter and chemical, wrong in a way that made her stomach turn. Its belly was distended, swollen, pregnant. Late term, judging by the size. And burned into the shoulder, visible even through the matted fur and ice, was a mark she recognized instantly, the king's crest, the double-crossed swords over a rising sun. Elite guard. No, Lena whispered. The word vanished into the wind. This wasn't random. This wasn't some lost animal that had wandered too far from its pack. This was an execution. The wolf's eyes cracked open, pale gold, filmed with pain and fever, and fixed on her. It made that sound again, that horrible, almost human whine, and tried to crawl forward. Its claws scraped against stone, found no purchase, and it collapsed onto its side. Blood, real blood now, red and hot, pooled beneath it. Lena stood in the doorway, snow piling around her boots, and felt the moment stretch into something fragile and sharp. If she left it outside, it would die in an hour, maybe less. If she brought it in, whoever had poisoned it, whoever had sent it out here to die, would know, would come. And they wouldn't stop at the wolf. The smart play was obvious. Close the door, let nature take its course, survive. She looked down at the dying creature. Its breathing was slowing, each exhale weaker than the last. The pups in its belly were still moving. She could see the skin ripple and shift. They didn't know they were dying. They just knew they wanted to live. The wolf looked at her with those gold eyes, and something passed between them. Not understanding exactly, just recognition. Two things that were supposed to be dead meeting at the edge of the world. "You're going to get me killed," Lena said. Then she grabbed it by the scruff and started dragging. The wolf weighed more than she did, probably twice as much, all muscle and bone and the dead weight of poison shutting down its system. Lena's boots skidded on the icy stone, her shoulders screaming as she hauled the creature inch by bloody inch. Snow blew in through the open door, already forming drifts on her floor. The wolf didn't resist. It just wheezed, claws scraping uselessly, too weak to do anything but bleed and breathe and hope. Lena got it halfway inside before her grip slipped. The wolf's head hit the floor with a thud that made her wince. "Come on, come on!" She adjusted her grip, fingers digging into fur still warm despite everything, and pulled again. Her boots found purchase. The wolf slid another foot, then another. Then she was clear of the door. Lena dropped the wolf, spun, and threw her weight against the door. It slammed shut, cutting off the wind like a severed scream. She dropped the bar into place, hands shaking, and stood there breathing hard, staring at the massive animal sprawled across her floor. "What the hell am I doing?" The wolf's eyes rolled toward her, its tongue lolled, black-stained and swollen. Poison. Definitely poison. Lena's training kicked in before the fear could. She knelt, hands already moving through the checklist. Pulse. She pressed 2 fingers to the wolf's neck, found the artery, counted. Weak. Thready. Maybe 60 beats per minute when it should have been twice that. Respiration. Shallow, labored, each breath rattling in the chest like stones in a jar. Temperature. She pressed her palm to the wolf's flank and hissed, burning up. Fever, probably septic. The pregnancy complicated everything. The pups were still alive. She could feel them shifting under the skin, restless and agitated. But the poison was spreading fast, shutting down the mother's organs one by one, and if she seized, if her heart stopped. Focus. She grabbed her bag, the battered leather satchel she'd carried since her academy days, and dumped it on the floor. Vials clattered and rolled. Bandages spilled out in loose coils. She sorted through them with the speed of muscle memory, pulling what she needed. Activated charcoal, yarrow extract, moonbell root, expensive, nearly impossible to find north of the capital, and the only thing that could counteract black vein toxin. She'd bought it off a smuggler 2 years ago. Spent a month's worth of rations on a single vial, kept it because some part of her had always known she'd need it. "Hold on," she muttered, uncorking the vial. The smell hit her immediately, sweet and acrid, like burned sugar and copper. The wolf's breathing hitched, its eyes glazed. Lena worked fast. She mixed the moonbell into a paste with a few drops of water, forced the wolf's jaws open, teeth like daggers, yellow and sharp even dying, and smeared it along the gums and under the tongue. The wolf gagged, choked, convulsed, but its body was too weak to fight. It swallowed reflexively. Good. Then came the hard part. She pulled out a thin steel probe, the kind used for deep wounds, and held it over the fire until the tip glowed red. The wolf's breathing was getting shallower. She didn't have much time. "This is going to hurt," she said. Not that the wolf understood, but talking helped, kept her steady. She found the entry wound on the wolf's shoulder, a puncture, deliberate, surrounded by blackened tissue. Someone had injected the poison directly into the bloodstream. Professional work. Efficient. Lena pressed the hot probe into the wound. The smell of burning fur and flesh filled the cabin, thick and choking. The wolf convulsed, a guttural snarl ripping from its throat, and for a second Lena thought it might have enough strength left to kill her. Its jaws snapped. Its claws raked the floor. But it didn't have the strength. Lena held it down with one hand on its neck, the other working the probe deeper, burning out the infected tissue. She'd done this before, on humans, on animals, on herself that one time with the infection. You had to be thorough. Miss even a small pocket of poison, and it would spread again, finish what it started. The wolf's struggles weakened. Its snarls became whimpers. I know. Just stay with me." She pulled the probe out, tossed it aside, and immediately packed the wound with a poultice of crushed yarrow and honey. Then she bound the shoulder with strips of clean linen, wrapping tight enough to hold but not so tight it cut off circulation. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash. She sat back on her heels, arms trembling, and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Count to 4. The wolf's pulse was stronger. Not by much, but enough. The poison was slowing. Lena checked the belly next, hands gentle on the swollen skin. The pups were moving more now, agitated by their mother's distress. She counted the shapes under the skin. 3, maybe 4. Hard to tell. If the mother died, they'd die with her. The pups were too developed to survive on their own, but not developed enough to be cut out safely. She'd need at least another week, maybe 2, before a surgical birth was viable, which meant keeping the mother alive. Lena looked at the wolf's face. Its eyes were half closed now, the fever making them glassy and unfocused, but it was breathing. That was something. "You're welcome," Lena said. Then she looked at the king's mark burned into its shoulder and felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. She didn't sleep that night. The storm raged outside, battering the cabin with fists of wind and ice that made the walls groan and the shutters rattle. Inside, the fire crackled, casting dancing shadows that looked like reaching hands. Lena sat with her back to the wall, knife across her lap, watching the wolf breathe. It slept, fitful, restless, but it slept. Its chest rose and fell in an uneven rhythm, and every few minutes it would whimper or twitch, legs kicking at dreams or pain. The pups moved constantly now, rolling and shifting, oblivious to the danger. Lena's mind wouldn't stop. Werewolves didn't just wander into the Frostmark. They were property, weapons, assets carefully tracked and accounted for. You didn't lose one any more than you'd lose a siege engine or a crate of swords, and you definitely didn't poison one unless you wanted it dead for a very specific reason. The pregnancy was the key. It had to be. Someone wanted those pups eliminated. Not just the mother, the pups. Why? Lena had spent 5 years in the Royal Medical Academy before everything fell apart. Top of her class. Specialization in trauma surgery and bloodline genetics. She'd studied the old texts, the ones that talked about how power passed through lineage, how certain families carried gifts that could be tracked and predicted. She knew the stories about werewolves, how certain lines carried more than just strength and speed, healing, foresight, empathy, and rarer still, appearing maybe once in a generation, truth sight. The ability to see through lies, cut through deception, expose what people desperately wanted to hide. If these pups carried that gift. Someone's scared, Lena said aloud. Her voice sounded strange in the quiet, too loud and too small at once. The wolf's ear flicked. Lena leaned forward, elbows on her knees. Someone with secrets. Someone high enough to command an elite guard wolf. Someone who'd rather kill you and your pups than risk what they might reveal. The pieces clicked together, cold and clean and horrible. This wasn't just murder. This was political murder. Someone at the highest levels of power, maybe in the king's own council, had ordered this wolf killed, had it injected with poison and sent north to die where no one would ask questions, and she'd just made herself a target. Great. Perfect. Excellent work, Lena. She should have left the wolf outside, should have let nature take its course and kept her head down like she'd been doing for 5 years. But that had never been her style, even when it should have been. She stood, legs stiff from sitting, and paced to the window. Cracked the shutter just enough to see out. The storm was stronger now, a wall of white that swallowed the world. Nothing moved out there. Nothing could. Even if someone wanted to come looking tonight, they'd die before they made it a mile. But they'd come. Once the storm broke, once they realized the wolf hadn't died where they'd left it, they'd come looking, and they'd find her. Lena closed the shutter and turned back to the wolf. It was watching her now, those gold eyes clearer than before, alert. "If I'm going to die for you," she said, "you'd better be worth it." The wolf's tail thumped once against the floor, weak but deliberate. Lena almost laughed. "You understand me, don't you?" Another thump. "Yeah, that's what I thought." She knelt beside the wolf and checked the wound again. The poultice was holding. No fresh bleeding. The skin around the burn was angry and red, but that was normal. Infection would take a day or two to set in, if it was going to. She'd need to change the bandages in the morning, force more medicine down the wolf's throat, keep it hydrated, keep it alive. "Here's the deal," Lena said, settling back against the wall. "You live, I live. You die, I probably die anyway, but at least I'll die knowing I tried. Sound fair?" The wolf huffed, a sound somewhere between agreement and exhaustion. "Good." Lena pulled a blanket over her shoulders and stared at the fire. Her mind was already working through scenarios. Best case, the storm lasted 3 or 4 days, gave her time to stabilize the wolf, maybe even deliver the pups early if she had to. Worst case, soldiers showed up at dawn and she had to fight her way out with the dying wolf and no backup plan. Somewhere in between. She got the wolf healthy enough to run, pointed it south toward the deeper wilderness, and hoped it was smart enough to disappear. None of the scenarios ended with her going back to her quiet life of stitching cloaks and rationing grain. That life was over. She'd ended it the moment she'd opened the door. Outside, the wind howled louder, and Lena closed her eyes. Morning came gray and silent. The storm had passed some time before dawn, leaving the world buried under fresh snow that glittered like broken glass in the weak sunlight. Lena stood outside, breath misting in the frigid air, and scanned the tree line. Nothing yet. She'd been up since first light, moving quietly so she wouldn't disturb the wolf, changed its bandages, forced more medicine down its throat, this time a mix of willow bark and crushed nettle to bring down the fever. The wolf had fought her less this time. Either it was learning to trust her, or it was too weak to care. Either way, it was alive. The fever had broken around midnight. Lena had woken from a half-doze to find the wolf's breathing easier, its temperature dropping back toward normal. The poison was still in its system, but the moonbell was doing its work. Another day or two, and the worst would be over. If they had another day or two. Lena adjusted the axe in her hands. She'd brought it outside under the pretense of splitting wood, but really she just wanted a weapon that didn't look like a weapon, and watched the horizon. The frostmark stretched out in all directions, white and empty and vast. The nearest settlement was 3 days' walk south, and that was just a trading post staffed by 2 old men who didn't ask questions. The capital was 2 weeks away, more if the weather turned bad. Out here, you were alone. Out here, no one heard you scream. Lena was starting to split a log when she saw them. 3 riders, coming from the south, cutting through the snow with the kind of precision that came from training and good horses. They wore dark cloaks, hoods up, but even from a distance she could see the way they moved. Soldiers, professional. Her stomach dropped. She set the axe against the chopping block and waited. They stopped 20 yards out, close enough to talk, far enough to react if she tried anything stupid. The lead rider pushed back his hood. Young, maybe 25, but the North aged people fast so he could have been younger. Hard eyes. A scar cutting through one eyebrow, the kind you got from a blade, not an accident. His hair was dark, cropped short in the military style. "You the exile?" he called. His voice carried easily across the snow. Lena didn't answer immediately. She took her time, looking at each of them. The lead rider, the one on the left, older, heavy-set, hand resting on the hilt of his sword. The one on the right, younger still, nervous. First mission, probably. All 3 wore the king's crest on their chests, elite guard, just like she'd thought. "Depends who's asking," she said finally. The lead soldier's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "We're looking for something, a wolf, sick, probably dead by now. Haven't seen it." "That so?" "Storm was bad," Lena said, keeping her voice flat. "Lot of things die out here. You want to dig through every snowbank. Be my guest." The lead soldier dismounted. The other 2 followed, moving with the synchronized ease of people who'd trained together. Their boots crunched in the snow. Lena's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face neutral, showed nothing. The lead soldier stepped closer, close enough now that she could see the details. The crest on his chest was freshly polished. His cloak was good quality, lined with fur. His sword was real steel, not the cheap iron most soldiers carried. Money, status, access. "Here's the thing," he said, voice easy, almost conversational. "That wolf was important, belonged to someone important, and if someone interfered, if someone, say, tried to save it, that'd be a problem." "For who?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. "For them." Lena met his gaze and held it. "Haven't seen your wolf." He studied her for a long moment. Then his eyes drifted past her toward the cabin. "That your place?" "Yeah." "Mind if we take a look inside?" "Yeah, I mind." The smile vanished. "We're not asking." "And I'm not inviting." The heavy-set soldier spoke up, his voice rough like gravel. "Listen, girl, we got orders. Wolf's dead or it's not. Either way, we need to confirm. You make this easy, we're gone in 5 minutes. You make it hard, you'll what?" Lena cut in. "Kill me? You're already planning to do that. I'm not stupid." The young one flinched. The lead soldier's expression didn't change. "Smart," he said. "Smarter than most exiles anyway, but not smart enough." He took another step forward. Lena shifted her weight, angled the axe just slightly. "You want in my home, you'll have to go through me." For a moment, nobody moved. The wind picked up, throwing snow in lazy spirals between them. Then the lead soldier laughed, short, sharp, genuine. You know what? I like you. Got spine. Shame. Shame? That you're about to die for nothing. He drew his sword, and Lena made a choice. She didn't wait for him to finish the draw, didn't give him time to set his stance or call orders to the others. She grabbed the axe with both hands and swung. Not at him, at his knee. The blade caught him mid-stride, cutting through the gap in his armor where the greave didn't quite meet the thigh plate. Metal screamed. Blood sprayed across white snow. He went down screaming. The other two reacted instantly, swords out, already moving, but Lena was faster. 5 years in the Frostmark had taught her that hesitation killed you. You moved first, moved hard, and worried about consequences later. She yanked the axe free and spun toward the heavy-set one. He was closer, already swinging, and she barely got the axe up in time to catch the blow. Steel rang against steel. The impact jarred her arms, sent pain shooting up to her shoulders. He was stronger, trained. She couldn't match him in a straight fight. So she didn't fight straight. She let the axe drop, ducked under his next swing, and drove her shoulder into his gut. He grunted, stumbled back, and she kicked his knee as hard as she could. Something popped. He roared and swung wild. The blade caught her across the arm. Pain exploded, white hot and immediate. Lena gasped, stumbled, felt blood soaking into her sleeve. The young one was on her now, sword raised, face pale but determined. "I'm sorry," he said, and brought the blade down. Lena rolled. The sword bit into snow and frozen earth where her head had been a second before. She kicked his legs out from under him, grabbed the axe, and came up swinging. The blade caught him in the shoulder, not deep, just enough to make him drop the sword and fall back, clutching the wound. 2 down. 1 wounded badly, 1 out of the fight. But the lead soldier was getting up. Blood poured from his leg, but he was still moving, still dangerous. His face was pale with pain and rage. "You're dead," he snarled. Lena backed toward the cabin, breathing hard, arms screaming. "Not yet." He came at her fast, sword flashing in the weak sunlight. Lena blocked once, twice, felt her arms going numb from the impacts. He was better than her, stronger, faster. If this kept up, she'd lose. So she stopped fighting. She turned and ran, straight for the cabin door. Behind her, the soldier shouted. Boots pounded through snow. Lena hit the door at full speed, threw it open, and dove inside. The wolf was waiting. It stood in the center of the room, still weak, still bandaged, but standing. Its lips were pulled back in a snarl that showed every one of those dagger teeth. Its eyes, those pale gold eyes, were locked on the doorway. The lead soldier burst through, saw the wolf, froze. "Shit!" The wolf lunged. Even injured, even poisoned, it was still a werewolf, still bred for killing. It hit the soldier like an avalanche. Jaws closed around his sword arm, bones crunched. He screamed and went down, and the wolf was on top of him, tearing, rending, savage and efficient. Lena slammed the door shut and dropped the bar. Outside, the other 2 soldiers were shouting, trying to get in. Inside, the fight was already over. The wolf stepped back from the body, blood dripping from its muzzle, and looked at Lena. She looked back. "Thanks," she said. The wolf's tail thumped once, then its legs gave out and it collapsed. "No, no, no!" Lena dropped beside it, hands already checking for new wounds. The exertion had torn some of the stitches. Fresh blood seeped through the bandages. The wolf's breathing was labored again, the fever returning. Outside, something heavy hit the door. "Open up!" the heavy-set soldier roared. "Open up or we burn you out!" Lena looked at the dead soldier, at the wolf, at her own bleeding arm. Then she looked at the door and smiled. Because they'd made a mistake. They'd confirmed the wolf was here, confirmed it was alive, which meant they couldn't just burn the cabin down, not if they wanted to finish the job properly. They'd have to come in, and she'd be waiting. Lena grabbed the dead soldier's sword, tested the weight. Good balance, sharp. The wolf watched her, panting. "Round 2, Lena said. You up for it?" The wolf's eyes gleamed. Outside, the door shuddered under another impact. Lena raised the sword and waited for them to break through. This was going to get messy, but she'd been messy before. The door held for 30 seconds. Then the wood splintered, and the heavy-set soldier came through like a battering ram, sword raised, face twisted with rage and pain. Lena was ready. She stepped aside, let his momentum carry him past her, and drove the stolen sword into the gap between his shoulder plates. The blade went in clean. He made a sound, half gasp, half scream, and dropped to his knees. She yanked the sword free. He fell forward and didn't move. The young soldier appeared in the doorway, saw his dead companions, and went white. "Drop it," Lena said. Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't shake. She was covered in blood, some hers, most not, and she felt nothing except the cold clarity that came when survival stopped being theoretical. The young soldier's sword clattered to the floor. "Good." Lena kept her blade trained on him. "Now talk. Who sent you?" He swallowed hard. I can't." "You can. Or you can join your friends. They'll kill me. I'll kill you right now." His eyes darted to the wolf, still collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. Then back to Lena. "Lord Valor Drax? He's on the King's Council. He ordered the wolf eliminated, said it was carrying something dangerous. The pups. Yeah, I don't know why. They just said it had to be done before the convergence." Lena's blood went cold. "What convergence?" "The celestial one, tomorrow night, when both moons align." He was talking fast now, desperate. Drax said if the pups were born during the convergence, they'd, awaken something. He wanted them dead before that could happen. "Tomorrow night, less than 24 hours. How many more of you are coming?" "I don't know. We were supposed to confirm the kill and report back. When we don't..." He stopped, realizing what he was saying. "They'll send more," Lena finished. "How many?" "A full unit. Maybe 10 soldiers, maybe more." Lena's mind raced. 10 trained soldiers. She couldn't fight that many. Even with the wolf, assuming it could fight at all, the odds were impossible. She looked at the young soldier. He couldn't have been more than 19, scared out of his mind, following orders because that's what soldiers did. "What's your name?" "Garrett." "Well, Garrett, here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of here. You're going to tell Drax the wolf is dead, the pups are dead, everything went according to plan. You're going to lie, and you're going to make it convincing. He'll know. He always knows. Then you'd better be a good liar." Lena lowered the sword slightly. "Or you can stay here and die with us. Your choice." Garrett looked at the bodies on the floor, at the blood soaking into the wooden planks, at Lena, who'd just killed 3 trained soldiers with an axe in desperation. "I'll do it," he whispered. "Smart." Lena stepped aside. "Go, now, before I change my mind." He ran. Lena watched him disappear into the white landscape, then closed what was left of the door and turned to the wolf. It was watching her with those gold eyes, alert despite the pain. "We need to move," Lena said. "This place is compromised." The wolf's tail thumped weakly in agreement. She worked fast, grabbed her medical bag, stuffed it with everything she could carry, medicines, bandages, surgical tools, added food, wrapped in oilcloth, a water skin, flint and steel. The dead soldier's cloak still relatively clean. The wolf tried to stand, made it halfway before its legs buckled. "Don't," Lena said, moving to its side. "You're not ready." The wolf growled, frustrated, not threatening. "I know, but if we're going to survive this, I need you alive." She checked the bandages again. The wound had reopened, but not badly. The stitches were holding. "Can you walk at all?" The wolf shifted, got its front legs under it, and pushed. It managed to stand, swaying, ribs heaving with the effort. "Good enough." Lena slung her bag over her shoulder and grabbed the sword. "There's a cave system about 2 miles north. Old hunter's shelter. If we can make it there before nightfall..." A sound from outside cut her off. Hoofbeats. Multiple horses. Coming fast. Damn it! Garrett hadn't even made it an hour before the next group arrived. Either he'd run into them on the way back, or Drax had sent them anyway. Either way, they were out of time. Lena looked at the wolf, at the door hanging off its hinges, at the bodies they'd have to leave behind. "Change of plans," she said. "We go now, north, through the forest. Stay off the main paths. You keep moving no matter what. Understood?" The wolf's eyes met hers. If I fall behind, you keep going. The pups are what matters. The hoofbeats were getting closer. Lena grabbed one of the dead soldier's cloaks and threw it over the wolf, hiding the king's mark. Then she pushed the door open and they stepped into the cold. The forest was a quarter-mile away. Open ground between here and there. No cover. If the soldiers saw them, move! They ran. Lena's boots hit the snow in a rhythm that matched her pulse. The wolf ran beside her, limping badly, each stride a visible effort. Behind them, she heard shouts. The soldiers had reached the cabin. There! In the snow! After them! Lena didn't look back. She focused on the tree line, getting closer with each step. 50 yards. 40. 30. An arrow hissed past her head. Faster! They hit the trees at full speed. Branches whipped past, tearing at her clothes, her face. The wolf crashed through underbrush, leaving a trail of broken branches and blood. More shouts behind them. The soldiers were following. Lena veered left, then right, trying to lose them in the maze of trunks and shadows. The wolf stayed close, breathing hard but keeping pace. They ran for what felt like hours but was probably minutes. The shouts faded. The forest thickened. When Lena finally stopped, pressing her back against a massive pine, her lungs were on fire and her legs felt like water. The wolf collapsed beside her, sides heaving. "We can't stop long," Lena gasped. "They'll track us." The wolf's eyes were glazed with pain and exhaustion. It tried to stand, failed. Lena knelt beside it, hands checking for new damage. The wound was bleeding again, soaking through the bandages. The exertion was too much. If they kept running like this, the wolf would die. If they stopped, the soldiers would find them. Think, think! The cave system. Still her best option, but it was 2 miles north and they'd already run west. She'd have to circle back, find the landmarks she knew, assuming she could remember them in winter when everything looked the same, assuming they lived that long. A branch snapped somewhere behind them. Lena's head whipped around. Through the trees, maybe 100 yards back, she saw movement. Dark cloaks, steel glinting. They were still being hunted. "Up!" she hissed, grabbing the wolf's scruff. "Come on, we have to—" The wolf snarled. Not at her. At something else. Lena turned and saw them. 3 more soldiers coming from the north. They'd split up, flanked them. Smart. She drew the sword, positioning herself between the wolf and the nearest soldier. "Stay down," she told the wolf. "I'll handle this." The wolf growled in protest. "Not negotiable." The soldiers closed in, forming a loose semicircle. These ones looked older, more experienced. They moved with the casual confidence of people who'd done this before. The one in the center, a tall woman with gray streaking her dark hair, spoke first. "You've caused a lot of trouble, healer." "Wasn't trying to." "Doesn't matter. Lord Drax wants the wolf dead. You're just collateral." "He send you to kill a pregnant animal?" Lena kept her voice steady. "That the kind of orders you follow?" The woman's expression didn't change. "We follow all orders. Even the evil ones? Especially those." She attacked. Lena barely got her sword up in time. The woman was fast, professional, her strikes precise and efficient. Lena blocked once, twice, felt her arms going numb from the impacts. The other 2 soldiers moved in from the sides. This was it. 3 against 1. No way out. The wolf tried to stand again, couldn't. Lena backed up, blade moving in desperate parries. Her wounded arm was screaming. Blood ran down her sleeve, making her grip slippery. The woman saw the weakness and exploited it. Her next strike came high, forcing Lena to block with her injured arm. Pain exploded. The sword flew from her hand. "Down," the woman said. Lena dropped to her knees. The sword rose, and the wolf lunged. Even dying, even broken, it was still a werewolf. Its jaws closed around the woman's leg. She screamed and went down. The other soldiers turned, swords raised. The wolf released the woman and faced them, blood dripping from its muzzle. It couldn't stand straight, could barely breathe, but it put itself between Lena and the soldiers, protecting her. "No," Lena gasped. "Don't." The soldiers advanced. The wolf snarled, and then, from somewhere deep in the forest, a howl split the air. Everyone froze. The howl came again, closer, answered by another, then another. A pack. The soldiers exchanged glances. The woman on the ground tried to stand, Failed. Pull back, she ordered. Now. But the wolf, I said pull back. They grabbed their injured companion and retreated into the trees, moving fast. Lena didn't wait to see where they went. She grabbed her sword, grabbed the wolf's scruff, and pulled. Move! We have to move! The wolf managed to get to its feet, swaying. The howls were getting closer. Whatever was out there, it wasn't friendly. They stumbled north, the wolf leaning heavily on Lena, both of them leaving a trail of blood in the snow. They found the cave just as night was falling. Lena almost missed it, just a crack in a rock face, half hidden by snow and frozen brush. But she remembered it from a supply run 2 years ago, remembered thinking it would make good shelter if she ever needed to hide. She needed to hide now. She helped the wolf inside, then collapsed the entrance behind them with fallen branches and packed snow. Not perfect, but enough to hide them from a casual search. The cave went back about 15 feet, opening into a space just big enough for both of them. The temperature was above freezing, barely, but enough. Lena's breath still misted, but the wind couldn't reach them. Small mercies. She got a fire going with the last of her tinder, fed it carefully until it caught. The light pushed back the shadows, revealing rough stone walls and a floor covered in old pine needles. The wolf collapsed immediately, breathing in harsh gasps. Lena worked by firelight, stripping away the blood-soaked bandages and examining the damage. The stitches had held, barely. The wound wasn't infected yet, but it would be soon if she didn't clean it properly. She heated water in a small pot, mixed in crushed yarrow and salt, and flushed the wound. The wolf whimpered but didn't fight. I know, Lena murmured. Almost done. She packed the wound with fresh poultice, bound it with the last of her clean bandages, then sat back and let herself breathe. They were alive. For now. Outside, full dark had fallen. The forest was silent except for the occasional crack of ice or distant animal sounds. No howls, no hoofbeats. Maybe they'd lost them. Maybe. Lena checked her own wound, a long gash across her forearm, deep but clean. She stitched it herself, biting down on a strip of leather to keep from screaming. 15 stitches, each one a white-hot needle of pain. When she finished, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely tie off the thread. The wolf watched her with those gold eyes. What? Lena said. The wolf huffed. Yeah, I know. I'm an idiot. She leaned back against the cave wall, suddenly exhausted. Should have left you outside, should have stayed in my cabin, should have... The wolf rested its head on her lap. Lena froze. Then slowly she lowered her hand to the wolf's head and scratched behind its ears. You're welcome, she whispered. They sat like that for a while, the fire crackling, the cave warm enough to stop shivering. Then the wolf's belly rippled. Lena felt it under her hand, a strong, deliberate movement. The pups, shifting inside their mother. How far along are you? Lena wondered aloud. She pressed gently on the wolf's abdomen, feeling the shapes under the skin. 3, maybe 4 pups. All moving. That's good. Another ripple. Stronger this time. The wolf whined. Easy, Lena soothed. They're just active, probably stressed from all the running. But something felt wrong. The movements were too strong, too frequent. Lena's medical training kicked in. She checked the wolf's pulse. Elevated. Respiration. Faster than it should be. Temperature. No. The fever was back. Worse than before. And the wolf's water had broken. No, no, no. Lena scrambled to her knees, hands already moving. It's too early. You're not ready. The convergence isn't until tomorrow night. The wolf's body convulsed. Labor. Active labor. Damn it! Lena grabbed her bag, dumping out supplies. She needed clean cloth, boiled water, something to cut the cords. The pups weren't due yet. They might not be developed enough to survive outside the womb. But they were coming anyway. The wolf's breathing shifted into a panting rhythm. Its eyes were wild with pain and fear. Okay, okay. Lena forced herself to calm down. She'd delivered babies before. Human babies, not wolf pups, but the principle was the same. We're going to get through this. You're going to listen to me and do exactly what I say. The wolf's tail thumped once. Good. Now breathe, just breathe. The contractions were coming fast. Too fast. This wasn't going to be a long labor. Lena positioned herself at the wolf's hindquarters, hands ready. The first pup crowned almost immediately, a tiny head, eyes still closed, covered in membrane. "Push," Lena urged. "Come on, push." The wolf bore down. The pup slid free in a rush of fluid and blood. Lena caught it, cleared its nose and mouth, rubbed it vigorously with a cloth. The pup made a sound, a tiny, mewling cry, and started breathing. "One down," Lena gasped. She set the pup aside, still attached by the cord, and turned back to the mother. The second pup was already coming. This one was bigger, stuck. The wolf whined, pushing hard, but nothing happened. "Breach," Lena muttered. "Of course." She reached inside, carefully, feeling for the pup's position. Found the hind legs. Gently, slowly, she turned the pup, guiding it into the right position. "Now push!" The wolf pushed. The pup came free, limp and silent. Lena's heart sank. She cleared the airway, rubbed harder, trying to stimulate breathing. Nothing. "Come on, breathe, breathe!" She tilted the pup's head down, clearing fluid from its lungs, rubbed its chest in firm circles. Still nothing. "No, you don't get to die, not after everything." She pressed gently on the pup's chest. Once, twice. The pup gasped, coughed, wheezed, and started breathing. "Yes," Lena laughed, almost crying. "Yes, okay. 2 down." The third pup came easier, small but strong, crying immediately. 3 pups, all alive, all breathing. Lena cut the cords, tied them off, and arranged the pups against their mother's belly. The wolf was exhausted, panting, but alert. Its nose touched each pup in turn, checking them. "You did it," Lena said. "They're all—" The wolf convulsed again. "What? No, there were only 3. A fourth pup, smaller than the others, coming fast. Lena barely had time to catch it. This one was tiny, half the size of its siblings, and it wasn't moving. She worked frantically, cleared the airway, rubbed, stimulated. Nothing. "No, come on, please." She breathed into the pup's nose, tiny, gentle breaths. The pup's chest rose, fell. She pressed on its chest, breathed again, rise, fall. "Live, damn you, live." The pup coughed, gasped, and opened its eyes. Gold, bright, burning gold, not pale like the mother's, not normal. These eyes glowed. Lena stared, frozen. The pup looked at her, and for a second, just a second, she felt something. A presence, ancient and aware and impossibly old for something just born. Then the glow faded to normal gold, and the pup mewled like any newborn. "What are you?" Lena whispered. The wolf nudged the fourth pup toward its siblings. All 4 pups latched onto their mother and started nursing. The mother's fever was dropping. The bleeding had stopped. Against all odds, they were going to survive. Lena sat back, covered in blood and birth fluids, and tried to process what she'd just seen. The pups, the glowing eyes. The convergence wasn't until tomorrow night, but the pups had been born early, and they'd opened their eyes immediately. That wasn't normal. Newborn pups were supposed to be blind for at least a week, unless— "The prophecy," Lena said slowly. "Truth sight. You're carrying the bloodline." The wolf looked at her. Its expression was unreadable, but Lena saw something there. Acknowledgement, maybe even gratitude. "Drax knows," Lena continued, pieces falling into place. "He knows what these pups can do. That's why he wanted them dead. Because if they survive until the convergence tomorrow night, when both moons align and their power fully awakens, they would expose him, expose all his secrets, every lie, every crime, every betrayal. The truth would come out, and he would fall. We have to keep you alive," Lena said. "Just one more day, until tomorrow night." The wolf's tail thumped. Outside, something moved. Lena's head snapped toward the entrance. Through the gaps in the branches, she saw light, torches, multiple torches, voices. "Tracks lead this way. Cave somewhere in this area. Find them before dawn." They'd been found. Lena looked at the wolf, exhausted from labor, at the 4 newborn pups, helpless and tiny, at the narrow cave entrance that wouldn't hold against a determined assault. And she made a decision. She grabbed the dead soldier's sword, checked the edge, still sharp. "Stay here," she told the wolf. "Protect the pups." The wolf's eyes widened. "I'm going to buy you time." Lena moved to the entrance, pushing aside just enough branches to see out. 10 soldiers, maybe 12, all armed, all coming this way. She couldn't fight that many, but she could slow them down. Lena stepped out of the cave and into the torchlight. "Looking for me?" she called. The soldier stopped, turned, and she saw him, standing at the back of the group, wrapped in a fur-lined cloak, his face sharp and cold in the flickering light. Lord Valor Drax himself. He smiled. "There you are." Lena raised her sword. "You want the wolf? You go through me." Drax's smile widened. "That can be arranged." He gestured. The soldiers advanced, and Lena ran straight at them, screaming, sword raised, knowing she was going to die, but determined to take as many as possible with her. The blades met with a sound like thunder. The first soldier went down hard, Lena's blade catching him across the throat before he could raise his guard. Blood sprayed black in the torchlight. She didn't stop to watch him fall. She spun, blocked a strike from the left, kicked another soldier in the knee hard enough to hear cartilage pop. He screamed and stumbled back. She drove her elbow into his face, felt his nose break, then turned to meet the next attacker. 2 down, 10 to go. The odds were impossible, but Lena had stopped caring about odds the moment she dragged a dying wolf into her cabin. She fought with the desperate efficiency of someone who had nothing left to lose, every movement, economy, and violence. A blade sliced across her ribs. She gasped, felt warm blood spreading under her shirt, but kept moving. Blocked, struck, dodged. 3 down. But there were too many. They were surrounding her, cutting off escape routes, and she was already slowing. Blood loss, exhaustion, the wound in her arm screaming every time she swung the sword. A boot caught her in the stomach. She doubled over, gasping, and a pommel smashed into her back. She went down hard, face first in the snow. Rough hands grabbed her, hauled her upright. Someone ripped the sword from her grip. Lord Valor Drax stepped forward, his polished boots crunching in the snow. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with sharp features and cold gray eyes that reminded her of a snake. "Impressive," he said. His voice was cultured, educated. The voice of someone who gave orders from comfortable rooms while other people did the bleeding. 3 of my best soldiers. You should be proud." Lena spat blood at his feet. "Go to hell." Drax smiled. Colorful, but ultimately pointless. He gestured toward the cave. "The wolf, the pups. Bring them out." "No!" Lena gasped, struggling against the soldiers holding her. "You can't!" A fist slammed into her face. Stars exploded across her vision. When she could see again, soldiers were already moving toward the cave entrance. "Stop them!" she screamed at Drax. "You have no idea what you're doing." "On the contrary, I know exactly what I'm doing." Drax clasped his hands behind his back, watching his soldiers work. "I'm eliminating a threat to the kingdom's stability. Those pups carry a bloodline that could destabilize everything we've built." "You mean everything you've built?" Lena shot back. "Your power, your secrets. You're scared of what they'll reveal." Drax's smile vanished. "Scared? No. Practical. The truth isn't always useful, healer. Sometimes it's just destructive." The soldiers reached the cave entrance, started tearing away the branches. Inside, the wolf snarled. "Careful," Drax called. "The mother's still dangerous. Kill her quickly." "The pups!" The cave entrance exploded. Not literally, but the wolf came out like an avalanche, faster than anything that injured should have been able to move. It hit the first soldier with enough force to snap his spine, then turned on the second, jaws closing around his arm and shaking him like a rag doll. The other soldiers stumbled back, shouting, weapons raised, but the wolf wasn't attacking them. It was creating distance, putting itself between the cave and Drax's men. Behind it, barely visible in the shadows of the cave mouth, 4 tiny shapes huddled together. The pups, mewling, helpless. "Crossbows," Drax ordered calmly. "Bring it down." 3 soldiers raised crossbows, drew, aimed. Lena screamed and threw her weight forward, breaking free from the soldiers holding her. She didn't have a weapon, didn't have a plan, just desperation. She tackled the nearest crossbowman. The bolt flew wild, disappearing into the forest. Then someone grabbed her hair and slammed her face into the ground. Pain, darkness, ringing in her ears. She heard the crossbows fire, heard the wolf yelp, heard Drax say something she couldn't make out through the blood rushing in her head. When her vision cleared, the wolf was down. 3 bolts buried in its side, blood spreading across white snow. It was still breathing, but barely. Still trying to crawl back to the cave, back to its pups. Persistent, Drax observed. I'll give it that. He drew a dagger from his belt. Expensive, ornate, the kind of weapon that had never been used for anything practical. Until now. He walked toward the wolf. Don't, Lena gasped. Please, they're just newborns. They can't hurt you. Not yet. Drax knelt beside the dying wolf, studying it with clinical detachment. But during the convergence, when their power fully awakens, they'd see everything I've done, every lie, every necessary evil. They'd tear down everything I've built to protect this kingdom. Protect? Lena's laugh came out as a cough. You mean control? Same thing. Drax pressed the dagger to the wolf's throat. History is written by survivors, healer, and I intend to survive. The wolf's gold eyes met his, and something strange happened. Drax froze. The dagger trembled in his hand, his face went pale, then gray, then white as bone. What? He whispered. No, that's not. Those people were traitors. I had to. He was seeing something the rest of them couldn't see. The wolf's eyes were glowing, faint but unmistakable. The same gold light Lena had seen in the smallest pup. They were innocent, Drax gasped. No, I gave the orders because they were plotting against. His hands shook violently. She was pregnant. I didn't know she was. He stumbled back, dropping the dagger. His face was a mask of horror. The wolf's eyes dimmed. It slumped back to the ground, the glow fading. But the damage was done. Drax's soldiers were staring at him. One of them, a grizzled veteran with scars across his face, spoke up. My lord, what did you see? Nothing, Drax snapped, but his voice cracked. I saw nothing. Kill the wolf. Kill the pups. Do it now. Nobody moved. The scarred soldier took a step forward. What did you see, my lord? That's an order. You said there were traitors. You said Lord Kellyan and his wife were plotting rebellion. You said we had to eliminate them before they struck. The soldier's voice was quiet, dangerous. We believed you. We followed your orders. We killed them both. Drax's face twisted. His wife was 6 months pregnant. Silence fell like snow. The soldier's hand went to his sword. What did you see? Drax pulled himself upright, trying to recover his composure. I saw a dying animal's hallucinations. Nothing more. Now follow your orders, or I'll have you. You'll have me what? The soldier drew his sword. Executed like the Kellyans? Like the Mordant family? Like everyone else who got too close to your secrets? The other soldiers were drawing weapons now too, not pointing them at the wolf, pointing them at Drax. You don't understand, Drax said, backing away. Everything I did was necessary. The kingdom was falling apart. Someone had to take control. Someone had to, lie? The scarred soldier advanced. Murder? Betray the king's trust? I am the king's most trusted advisor. You're a traitor. Drax ran. He made it maybe 10 feet before the soldiers caught him. They didn't kill him, not yet, just dragged him back, forced him to his knees in the snow. The scarred soldier looked at Lena. You, healer. The wolf showed him the truth? Lena nodded, struggling to sit up. Truth sight. It's a bloodline trait. The pups carry it too. During the celestial convergence tomorrow night, their power will fully awaken. And they'll expose everyone's secrets. Everyone who's lied. Everyone who's committed crimes they've hidden. Lena met his eyes. Everyone who has blood on their hands they've never accounted for. The soldier looked down at his own hands, rough, scarred, stained with years of following orders without questions. We've all got blood on our hands, he said quietly. Yeah, but there's a difference between following bad orders and giving them. The soldier nodded slowly. Then he looked at Drax, still held between two of his own men. Lord Valor Drax, by the authority of the king's elite guard, I'm placing you under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and murder." "You can't do this," Drax hissed. "I have allies. The entire council will..." "Will what? Defend you after the pups expose them too?" The soldier shook his head. "It's over." Drax's expression transformed. The fear vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "You're right. It is." He moved faster than anyone expected, ripped free from the soldiers holding him, grabbed a fallen crossbow, and fired. Not at the wolf, at the cave, at the pups. Lena screamed and threw herself forward, but she was too far away, too slow, still bleeding from a dozen wounds. The bolt flew straight and true, and stopped in midair. Just stopped, like it had hit an invisible wall. Everyone froze. The bolt hung suspended for a heartbeat, then dropped harmlessly to the snow. From inside the cave, 4 pairs of eyes gleamed gold. Not faint, not dim, blazing like small suns. The pups stepped out into the torchlight. They shouldn't have been able to walk yet. They'd been born hours ago, barely strong enough to nurse, but they walked on steady legs, their eyes fixed on Drax. And when they looked at him, he screamed, "No, stop! I didn't... Those were orders from the king! I was just following... No, that's not true. I gave the orders, but they deserved it. No, stop, stop!" He clawed at his own face, leaving bloody scratches. The soldiers holding him let go, backing away in horror. Drax fell to his knees, sobbing. "I killed them. I killed all of them. Kellyan, his wife, their unborn child, the Mordant family, the witnesses, everyone who knew the truth. I poisoned Lord Gareth at the winter feast because he was going to expose the grain embezzlement. I framed Commander Tyrell for desertion so I could take his position. I ordered the burning of the southern villages to hide the evidence of the missing tax revenues. His voice broke into incoherent screaming. The pups' eyes dimmed. They swayed on their tiny legs, exhausted from using power they weren't supposed to have for another day. But they'd done it. They'd shattered Drax completely. The scarred soldier stared at his former commander, then at the pups, then at Lena. "What are they?" he whispered. "Justice," Lena said. She crawled to the mother wolf. It was still breathing, barely. The crossbow bolts buried deep in its side. Its eyes found Lena's. Grateful. Sad. Dying. "No," Lena gasped. She grabbed her medical bag, hands shaking. "No, you don't get to die. Not after..." The wolf touched its nose to her hand. Gentle. Final. Then its eyes moved to the pups. Back to Lena. Protect them. The message was clear even without words. "I will," Lena promised. "I swear I will." The wolf's eyes closed. Its breathing slowed and stopped. Lena knelt in the snow beside the body, one hand on the wolf's cooling fur, and felt something break inside her chest. She'd seen death before. Caused it, even. But this felt different. This felt personal. The pups approached on unsteady legs. They nuzzled their mother's body, making soft mewling sounds that might have been grief. The smallest one, the 4th pup, the one that had opened its glowing eyes first, climbed into Lena's lap and looked up at her. Those eyes were normal gold now, tired, scared, just a baby. Lena wrapped her arms around it and let herself cry. She didn't know how long she sat there. Minutes, hours. Time had stopped meaning anything. Eventually, the scarred soldier approached. He knelt in the snow a respectful distance away. "My name is Marcus Thorne," he said quietly. "I've served in the elite guard for 15 years, followed every order without question. And now..." He looked at Drax, who was still on his knees, rocking back and forth, muttering confessions. "Now I don't know what I've been serving." Lena looked at him. "The kingdom. Just not the people running it." "Maybe." Marcus studied the pups. "What happens to them now? And to you?" "I don't know. Drax has allies in the capital, powerful ones. When word gets out about what happened here, they'll try to cover it up," Lena finished. "Kill the pups. Kill anyone who knows the truth." "Yeah." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, "Unless we don't give them the chance." Lena looked at him sharply. "What are you suggesting?" "The celestial convergence is tomorrow night. You said the pups' power will fully awaken then." Marcus gestured to his men, who were standing in a loose circle, watching uncertainly. "Most of these soldiers are good people. They followed Drax because they thought he was acting for the kingdom. Now they know better." So? So we take the pups to the capital, we wait for the convergence, and we let them expose everyone. Marcus met her eyes. All of it. Every lie, every crime, every secret these bastards have been hiding. That would destroy the government, Lena said. Good. It's rotten anyway. People will die. People are already dying. Marcus's voice was hard. We've been killing innocents on Drax's orders for years. Time to stop. Lena looked down at the pup in her lap, at the three others huddled near their mother's body. They were so small, so fragile, and so dangerous. The capital is 2 weeks away, she said. We have 1 day. Marcus smiled grimly. Then we'd better hurry. Chem. They moved fast. Marcus's soldiers, the ones who'd chosen to follow him instead of fleeing, gathered supplies from their camp. Horses, food, weapons, medical supplies. Lena worked on herself first, stitching the worst wounds and packing them with poultice. She'd lost a lot of blood, but she could still ride. Had to. The pups were another problem. They were too young to travel normally. She fashioned a sling from one of the soldiers' cloaks, creating a carrier she could wear across her chest. The pups fit inside, warm against her body. The smallest one nuzzled her throat and made a soft sound. I know, Lena whispered. I miss her too. They left the mother wolf's body where it fell. No time for burial. Marcus posted 2 soldiers to guard the site, keep scavengers away. We'll come back for her, he promised Lena. Give her a proper funeral. Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They mounted up. Lena had never been good with horses, but the one Marcus gave her was old and patient. It tolerated her clumsy mounting and didn't bolt when the pups squirmed in their sling. Drax they tied across a horse like cargo, still muttering his confessions to the empty air. His mind was gone, shattered by what the wolf had shown him. Part of Lena felt sorry for him, most of her didn't. They rode south through the night, pushing hard. The forest gave way to open plains, then to foothills, then to the first scattered villages that marked the edge of civilization. People stared as they passed. A group of elite guard soldiers, riding hard, with a half-frozen woman carrying something in a sling and a raving lord tied to a horse. Nobody tried to stop them. They changed horses at a military outpost. The commander there recognized Marcus, saw the state of Drax, and didn't ask questions, just provided fresh mounts and supplies. How far to the capital? Lena asked. Normally, 5 days hard riding. Marcus checked the sky. The sun was setting, painting the clouds blood red. We'll make it in 3. We have 1 day until the convergence. I know. Marcus spurred his horse forward. So we don't stop. They rode through the second night. Lena dozed in the saddle, jerking awake every time she started to fall. The pups slept against her chest, their warmth the only thing keeping her from freezing. Dawn came gray and cold. They stopped at a river to water the horses. Lena climbed down, legs barely working, and nearly collapsed. Marcus caught her. When's the last time you slept? I don't remember. You need to rest. We don't have time. You're no good to those pups dead. Marcus guided her to a fallen log. Sit. 15 minutes. I'll keep watch. Lena sat. The pups squirmed in their sling, hungry. She'd been feeding them goat's milk from a water skin, but they needed more, needed their mother. The smallest pup looked up at her with those gold eyes, still normal, not glowing, but watching, always watching. What are you thinking? Lena wondered aloud. Can you understand me? The pup tilted its head. Yeah, that's what I thought. Lena scratched behind its ears. We're almost there. 1 more day. Then you can do what you were born to do. The pup yawned, showing tiny needle teeth, and went back to sleep. Lena leaned against the log and closed her eyes, just for a moment. She woke to Marcus shaking her shoulder. We need to move, now! Lena jerked upright. What? Riders, coming from the north, at least 20, moving fast. Her blood went cold. Drax's allies. Yeah. Marcus was already mounting his horse. They know we're coming. Someone must have sent word from the outpost. Can we outrun them? Not with tired horses and you half dead. Marcus drew his sword. We fight. There's too many. I know. The riders appeared on the horizon, dark shapes against the morning sky, coming fast. Lena looked at the pups, at Marcus and his handful of loyal soldiers, at the impossible odds, and made a decision. No, she said, we don't fight. Then what? We run, but not together. Lena climbed onto her horse, cradling the pups. You lead them away. I'll take the pups and circle around. That's suicide. So is fighting 20 soldiers. Lena met his eyes. The pups are what matters. Everything else is just buying time. Marcus stared at her. Then he nodded. There's a town called Greystone about 10 miles southwest. Old cathedral in the center. If you make it there before nightfall, the convergence will happen during evening prayers. Maximum witnesses. And if I don't make it, then we all die and Drax's allies win. Marcus clasped her shoulder. Don't die, healer. You either, he grinned. No promises. Then he was gone, riding north with his soldiers, shouting to draw the attention of the pursuing riders. It worked. The riders split. Most followed Marcus, but 3 broke off, heading southwest, toward Lena. She didn't wait to see how Marcus fared. She turned her horse and rode. The chase lasted hours. Lena's horse was exhausted, stumbling more with each mile. The riders behind her were gaining. She could hear their shouts, getting closer. The sun was setting. The sky was turning the deep purple that came before full dark, and both moons were rising. Lena crested a hill and saw it. Greystone. A small town built around an old cathedral, its spire reaching toward the darkening sky. The convergence would happen at the cathedral, when both moons aligned directly overhead, in less than an hour. She urged her horse down the hill. It stumbled, nearly fell, but kept going. Behind her the riders were shouting, 50 yards back. Maybe less. The town gates were ahead, open, unguarded. Lena rode through just as the first moon cleared the horizon. People scattered as she galloped down the main street. The cathedral was ahead, its doors open, light spilling out into the gathering dusk. She could hear singing. Evening prayers had started. Behind her the riders entered the town. Lena dismounted at a run, nearly falling, and sprinted for the cathedral doors. The pups bounced in their sling, crying out. The second moon was rising. She burst through the cathedral doors. The singing stopped. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, a wild woman covered in blood and dirt, carrying something in a makeshift sling, gasping for breath. Please, Lena gasped. Sanctuary. The priest at the altar started to speak. The riders crashed through the doors behind her. That woman is a criminal, the lead rider shouted, harboring stolen property of Lord Drax. Hand her over. The priest looked between Lena and the riders. This is sacred ground. No weapons are permitted. Stand aside or we'll burn this place down. People gasped. Some ran. Others stood frozen. Lena looked up through the cathedral skylight. Both moons were visible now, moving closer. Minutes. She just needed minutes. These pups, Lena said loudly, addressing the crowd, carry the truth sight bloodline. They can expose lies, reveal secrets, and there are people in power who would rather kill them than face what they've done. She's insane, the rider shouted. Am I? Lena turned to face him. Then why are you so desperate to stop me? What are you afraid they'll see? The rider's face went pale. The moons were almost aligned. Lena pulled the pups from the sling and set them on the cathedral floor. They stood on shaky legs, looking around with those gold eyes. And then the convergence began. Both moons aligned perfectly, visible through the skylight. Their combined light flooded the cathedral, silver and bright and cold. The pups' eyes started to glow, not faintly, not dimly, like stars. Everyone in the cathedral froze. The light from the pups' eyes spread outward in waves, washing over the crowd. And the truth came out. The lead rider screamed, I killed Lord Merrick. Drax paid me to make it look like an accident. I pushed him from the tower and lied about... A woman in the crowd fell to her knees. I've been embezzling from the orphanage fund for 3 years. The children went hungry, so I could... A merchant grabbed his own throat. The grain shortage wasn't natural. We hoarded supplies to drive up prices. People starved while we... All around the cathedral, people were confessing, screaming, crying. Every hidden crime, every buried sin, every lie dragged into the light. The priest stared at his own hands. I knew about the abuse. For years I knew, and I did nothing because the abuser donated so much to the church. It went on and on. The truth spreading like a flood, unstoppable and absolute. And then one of the soldiers from the Capitol, one who'd been standing guard near the door, spoke up in a shaking voice. Alpha King Kale Draven is coming. He's been riding for 2 days. He saw a vision of the betrayal. Every head turned. The king? Someone whispered. He's here, in the town. He knows everything. The cathedral doors burst open, and there he stood, Kyle Draven, Alpha King of the realm, tall, broad-shouldered, his face carved from stone and fury. His eyes swept the cathedral, taking in the chaos, the confessions, the weeping crowds. Then he saw Lena, saw the pups, saw the truth written in gold light across everyone's faces. What? He said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Have you done to my kingdom? Lena met his eyes and didn't flinch. Saved it, she said. The cathedral fell silent. Even the confessions stopped, choked off by the sudden presence of absolute authority. Kale Draven stood in the doorway like a storm given human form. He wasn't what Lena had expected. The stories painted him as cold, distant, untouchable. But the man standing before her looked haunted, exhausted. His dark hair was matted with sweat and road dust. His clothes, expensive once, now ruined, were splattered with mud and what might have been blood. He'd ridden hard, pushed himself to the breaking point. For this. His eyes locked on Lena, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Then his gaze dropped to the pups, still glowing with that impossible golden light, and something in his expression shifted. Recognition. Horror. Understanding. The prophecy, he said. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming. The war wolves of House Silvermane. They told me the bloodline was extinct. They lied, Lena said. Her legs were shaking. She wanted to sit down, pass out, sleep for a week. But she locked her knees and stayed standing. Lord Drax tried to kill them before the convergence, before they could expose what he'd done. Kale's jaw tightened. Where's Drax? One of Marcus's soldiers, he'd made it to the cathedral somehow, wounded but alive, stepped forward. Outside, Your Majesty, under guard. He's not well. Show me. They brought Drax in on a stretcher. He looked like he'd aged 20 years in 2 days. His hair had gone white. His eyes were sunken, staring at nothing. He muttered constantly under his breath, a stream of confessions that never stopped. Pushed her down the stairs myself, made it look like she fell. Nobody questioned it. Why would they? I was so careful, so careful. But the blood. There was so much blood. Kale stared down at his former advisor. The man he'd trusted for 15 years. The man who'd helped him rebuild the kingdom after the Civil War. What did you do? Kale's voice was barely a whisper. Drax's eyes focused on him. For just a moment, clarity returned. I saved the kingdom. You were too weak, too merciful. Someone had to make the hard choices. Hard choices? Kyle's hands were shaking. You murdered innocent people. There are no innocent people. Drax's voice rose to a shriek. Everyone lies. Everyone cheats. I just did it better than the rest. I did it for you, for the kingdom. You did it for power. Drax laughed. It was a broken, terrible sound. Power? I was powerful. Past tense. Because of her. He pointed a trembling finger at Lena. Because of some exile who couldn't mind her own business. Lena met his eyes. You tried to kill 4 newborn pups because you were scared of the truth. That's not power. That's cowardice. Drax lunged at her, or tried to. He made it maybe 2 feet before the guards grabbed him, forced him back down. He fought them, screaming, until exhaustion took him, and he collapsed into incoherent sobbing. Kale watched it all with an expression like stone. Then he turned to Lena. You. What's your name? Lena Vierick. The healer they exiled 5 years ago? She blinked. You know about that? I know about all the exiles. I review every case personally. His eyes were hard. You were convicted of medical negligence. A patient died under your care. A patient who would have died anyway, Lena shot back. I tried an experimental treatment because it was his only chance. It didn't work. The medical council decided I'd overstepped my authority. Did you? Yeah, I did. Lena lifted her chin. And I'd do it again, because trying and failing is better than not trying at all. Something flickered in Kael's expression. Not quite approval, but maybe understanding. He looked back at the pups. They'd stopped glowing now, exhausted from using their power. The smallest one was asleep in Lena's arms. The other three had collapsed in a pile, breathing in perfect synchronization. They're so small, Kael said quietly. They're 4 days old, born early. Their mother died protecting them. The elite guard wolf. I sent her north on a routine patrol 3 weeks ago. Kael's voice went cold. Someone diverted her mission, poisoned her, left her to die in the frostmark. Drax, Lena confirmed. He knew what she was carrying, knew what would happen during the convergence. Kael was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to address the cathedral. His voice rang out, clear and commanding. I came here because I saw a vision. 2 nights ago, during meditation, the truth came to me. I saw betrayal, corruption, lies woven so deep into my government that I couldn't tell where loyalty ended and treachery began. He paused. I didn't want to believe it. I've spent years building this kingdom, trusting my advisors, believing in the system. The crowd watched, silent. But the pups don't lie. They can't. What you heard tonight, the confessions, the admissions, that's the truth, all of it. Kael's hands clenched into fists. And I will not allow it to stand. A murmur ran through the cathedral. Fear, hope, uncertainty. One of the riders who'd chased Lena spoke up, his voice shaking. Your Majesty, if we expose everything, the kingdom will fall into chaos. The people need stability. They need... The truth, Kael interrupted. They need the truth, even if it hurts, even if it's ugly. But the council is finished. Kael's voice was absolute. As of this moment, I'm dissolving it. Every member will face trial. Every crime will be investigated. And anyone found guilty of corruption, murder, or treason will face justice. The rider went pale. That's half the government. Then we'll build a new one. Lena stared at the king. She'd expected resistance, expected him to try to cover everything up, protect his reputation, maintain the status quo. Instead, he was burning it all down. You're serious, she said. Kael turned to her. You dragged a dying wolf through a blizzard and fought off trained soldiers to protect 4 pups that weren't even yours. Do I look like I'm less committed than you? Fair point. What happens now? Lena asked. Now? Kael looked at the pups, then at the crowd of witnesses. Now we make sure everyone knows what happened here. No cover-ups. No quiet executions. Everything public, everything transparent. He gestured to one of his guards. Send riders to the capital. I want the entire council assembled in the throne room in 3 days. Every member, no exceptions. Your Majesty, 3 days isn't enough time to... Make it enough. Kael's voice was steel. And bring scribes, lots of them. We're going to need records. The guard saluted and ran. Kael turned back to Lena. Can the pups do what they did here again? In the capital? In front of the full court? Lena looked down at the sleeping pups. I don't know. They're so young. Using their power during the convergence nearly killed them. But can they? She thought about it, about the way the smallest pup's eyes had glowed when it looked at Drax, about the wave of truth that had swept through the cathedral. Maybe, if they're strong enough, if the conditions are right, then we have 3 days to make them strong enough. Kael's expression softened slightly. Can you do that? I'm a healer, not a miracle worker. You've already worked one miracle. What's another? Lena wanted to argue, wanted to point out that she was exhausted, wounded, running on fumes and stubbornness. But she looked at the pups, at their tiny faces, peaceful in sleep, and she thought about their mother, about the promise she'd made. Protect them. Yeah, Lena said. I can do that. Kael nodded. Good. Then, on one condition. The king raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating with me? Yeah, I am. Lena met his eyes. When this is over, when the trials are done and the corruption is exposed, I want my exile lifted. I want my medical license restored. And I want a formal apology from the council that convicted me. The council won't exist by then. Then from you. Kale studied her. Then to her surprise, he smiled. It was brief, barely there, but genuine. Deal. So, they left Greystone at dawn. Kyle had commandeered the town's inn, giving Lena and the pups the best room while he met with his remaining loyal guards. Marcus was there too, wounded but alive, along with 6 of his soldiers. The rest had died during the chase, buying time for Lena to reach the cathedral. Lena sat in a too-soft bed, the first real bed she'd slept in for 5 years, and fed the pups goat's milk from a cloth. They drank greedily, making soft sounds of contentment. The smallest one finished first. It looked up at her with those gold eyes and chirped. "You're welcome," Lena murmured. A knock at the door. Kyle entered without waiting for permission. Kings didn't wait, apparently. "How are they?" he asked. "Hungry, tired, but alive." Lena set down the feeding cloth. "What happens when we reach the capital? You really think the council will just sit there and let the pups expose them?" "No, they'll try to fight, maybe even attempt a coup." Kale leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "That's why I sent riders ahead. By the time we arrive, half the military will be waiting, loyal soldiers who believe in the kingdom more than in corrupt politicians." "You hope." "I know." His voice was certain. "I've spent 15 years building this military, training them, teaching them that honor matters more than orders. If I'm wrong, if they choose corruption over truth, then the kingdom deserves to fall." Lena studied him. "You're gambling everything." "So are you." She couldn't argue with that. Kale pushed off from the wall. "Get some rest. We ride at midday. The capital is 3 days away if we push hard." "The pups can't ride that long." "Then we'll make accommodations." He paused at the door. "Lena?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for not giving up." He left before she could respond. Back. The journey to the capital was brutal. They rode from dawn to dusk, stopping only to rest the horses and let Lena tend to the pups. Word had spread ahead of them, riders carrying news of the convergence, of the confessions, of the king's declaration. By the time they reached the first major town, crowds had gathered. Some threw flowers, others threw stones. The kingdom was fracturing. Some people wanted the truth exposed. Others wanted stability, even if it was built on lies. Kyle rode at the front, his face impassive as debris flew past. He didn't flinch when a rock hit his shoulder, didn't react when someone screamed that he was destroying everything their ancestors built. He just kept riding. Lena rode beside him, the pup secured in a reinforced sling against her chest. She'd learned to ignore the shouting, learned to focus on the pups, on keeping them calm and safe. But it was hard. On the second day, they passed through a village where the mayor had been exposed during the convergence's aftershocks. The truth site had spread beyond the cathedral, radiating outward like ripples in a pond. Anyone within a certain radius of the pups during the convergence had been affected. The mayor had confessed to embezzling relief funds meant for flood victims. The villagers had torn him apart, literally. Lena saw the body as they rode through, hung from a tree, mutilated beyond recognition. "This is what happens," someone shouted at Kyle. "This is what your truth brings. Violence, chaos." Kale stopped his horse, turned to face the crowd. "No," he said. His voice carried across the village square. "This is what happens when corruption is allowed to fester for so long that the only release is violence. The mayor stole from you. He let your family starve while he grew rich. My truth didn't do that. He did. But we wouldn't have known if what? If you'd stayed ignorant?" Kale's eyes swept the crowd. "Is that what you want? To go back to not knowing who's robbing you? Who's lying to you? Who's sacrificing your children for their own gain?" Silence. "I didn't think so." Kale spurred his horse forward. "The truth hurts, but lies kill. Remember that." They rode on. The capital came into view on the third day. Massive walls, golden spires, the seat of power for 1,000 years. And surrounding it, camped in neat military formations, was an army. Thousands of soldiers, all wearing the king's colors. Lena's breath caught. That's every loyal regiment within 3 days' march, Kael said. I called them all. What about the ones who aren't loyal? They're inside the walls, with the council. Kael's smile was sharp. Let's see who blinks first. They rode toward the main gate. It was closed, barred from the inside. Kael didn't slow down. When they were 50 yards out, he raised his hand. The army behind them stopped. Then Kael's voice rang out, amplified somehow, echoing off the walls. I am Kael Draven, Alpha King of this realm. I demand entry to my own capital. Open the gates. Silence. Then a voice from the walls, Lord Chancellor Morvain, Drax's closest ally. Your Majesty, the Council has convened an emergency session. We request that you enter alone, without your army, so we may discuss— No. Morvain paused. Your Majesty, I said no. I'm not discussing anything. I'm not negotiating. Kael's voice was cold. You have 1 hour to open the gates and surrender for trial. After that, I will consider this treason and act accordingly. You can't threaten the entire council. I'm not threatening, I'm promising. Kael gestured. Soldiers moved forward, carrying something large and covered in canvas. They pulled the canvas off. A siege engine, pre-assembled and ready. Morvain's voice rose in panic. You wouldn't dare attack your own capital. Try me. The walls erupted in chaos, shouting, arguments. Lena could see figures moving behind the battlements, gesturing frantically. Kael sat on his horse, absolutely still, and waited. 40 minutes passed. Then the gates opened. Not fully, just enough for a delegation to emerge. 5 council members. Morvain at the front, all of them pale and sweating despite the cold. Kael dismounted. Lena did the same, keeping the pups close. Morvain stepped forward. Your Majesty, please, we can resolve this peacefully. These accusations against Lord Drax aren't accusations, Kael interrupted. They're confessions. He admitted everything. Under duress, the wolf's power, the pups. It's unnatural. You can't trust— I trust them more than I trust you. Morvain's face went red. This is madness. You're destroying this kingdom based on the word of some exile and a pack of animals. Those animals, Lena said quietly, see the truth. Can you say the same? Morvain turned to her, sneering. You, the disgraced healer. You're the cause of all this. If you just minded your own business, people would still be dying on your orders, Lena finished. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Morvain turned back to Kael. Your Majesty, I'm begging you, don't do this. The kingdom needs stability. Needs to be purged. Kael's voice was final. You have a choice, Morvain. Surrender peacefully and face trial. Or resist and face my army. Either way, this ends today. You're bluffing. Am I? Kael raised his hand. Behind him, the siege engine creaked as soldiers loaded it. Morvain went white. You'd really— Yes. The other council members were already backing away, hands raised in surrender. Morvain stood alone, shaking with rage and fear. Then he broke. Fine. We surrender. He fell to his knees. Just promise us a fair trial. Promise us— I promise you the truth, Kael said. Nothing more. Nothing less. He gestured. Soldiers moved forward, taking the council members into custody. The gates opened fully, and Kael Draven rode into his capital with an army at his back and justice in his eyes. The throne room was packed. Every noble, every merchant lord, every military commander, and at the center, chained and kneeling, the entire council. Kael sat on his throne, Lena standing to his right with the pups in her arms. The smallest one was awake, watching everything with those 2 intelligent gold eyes. We are here, Kael announced, to determine the truth. For too long, this kingdom has operated on lies, on secret deals and hidden crimes. Today, that ends. Morvain tried to speak. A guard slapped him. Kael continued. Each member of the council will be examined by the truth-seers. If you are innocent, you will be freed and given my personal apology. If you are guilty— He let the sentence hang. The pup's eyes started to glow, and the confessions began. It was worse than the cathedral. Worse than anything Lena had imagined: murder, embezzlement, treason, bribery, blackmail. One council member had ordered the assassination of a rival's entire family. Another had been selling military secrets to enemy nations. A third had run a slavery ring disguised as an apprenticeship program. On and on it went, each crime more horrifying than the last. The crowd watched in stunned silence. When it was over, when every council member had confessed everything, Kyle stood. The council is hereby dissolved. Its members will face trial under military law. The sentences will be carried out publicly. He paused. And we will build something new, something better, something based on truth. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some crying, some just standing in shock. Lena looked down at the pups. They'd stopped glowing, exhausted again. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." The smallest pup chirped and nuzzled her hand. Kael turned to her. "It's not over. We still have to rebuild, find new leaders, establish systems that can't be corrupted. That's going to take years." "Yeah." He smiled slightly. "Good thing I'm not doing it alone." Lena blinked. "What?" "You made a deal. Your exile lifted, your license restored. An apology." Kael gestured to the crowd. "But I'm adding one more condition." "Oh?" "You stay. Help me rebuild. Use your skills to train a new generation of healers, ones who care more about patience than politics." Lena stared at him. "You want me to—" "Yes." She looked at the pups, at the throne room, at the future stretching out before them, uncertain but full of possibility. And she thought about that cabin in the Frostmark, about the silence and the cold and the loneliness. "Okay," she said. "I'll stay." Kael's smile widened. "Good." And for the first time in 5 years, Lena Vierik felt like she was home. The first execution happened 3 days later. Lena stood in the crowd, the pups in a reinforced carrier strapped across her chest, and watched as Lord Chancellor Morvain was led to the scaffold. He'd fought his sentence to the end, screaming about tradition and stability and the chaos the king was unleashing. Nobody listened. The axe fell clean. The crowd didn't cheer. They just watched in silence, processing the fact that the second most powerful man in the kingdom was now a headless corpse being carried away in a cart. Kael stood on the palace balcony above, his face expressionless. When the executioner looked up for confirmation, the king just nodded. Next. 6 more counselors died that day, the ones whose crimes had been the worst: murder, treason, the enslavement of children. The ones the pups' truth site had exposed so thoroughly that even their own families had turned away. Lena didn't watch them all. After the 3rd execution, she left, walking back through the capital's winding streets toward the palace. The pups were restless, squirming in their carrier, picking up on her tension. "I know," she murmured. "I don't like it either." But she understood why it had to happen. The kingdom needed to see that justice wasn't negotiable, that power wouldn't protect you from consequences. Still, watching people die, even guilty people, left a sour taste in her mouth. She found Kael in his private study that evening, surrounded by papers and maps. He looked up when she entered, exhaustion written across his face. "How many more?" Lena asked. "Executions?" 3 tomorrow. 2 the day after. He set down the document he'd been reading. Then the trials moved to lesser crimes: embezzlement, bribery. Those get prison sentences or forced restitution. And then? And then we figure out how to run a kingdom with half the government gone. Kael rubbed his eyes. "I've been working on a new council structure, smaller, more oversight. Representatives elected by the regions instead of appointed by the crown." Lena blinked. "You're giving up power?" "I'm redistributing it. There's a difference." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. You look like you're about to fall over." She sat, grateful. The pups immediately scrambled out of the carrier and onto the floor, exploring this new space with clumsy enthusiasm. The smallest one found Kael's boot and started chewing on the lace. Kael looked down, startled. Then he carefully reached down and scratched the pup's head. It made a sound of pure contentment. "They're growing fast," he observed. "Yeah. Another week, and they'll be too big for the carrier." Lena watched them play. "What happens to them after this? After the rebuilding?" "I was going to ask you the same thing. They're not mine to decide for." "Aren't they?" Kyle met her eyes. You saved them, raised them, nearly died for them. If anyone has a say in their future, it's you. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, their mother wanted them protected, free, not used as tools or weapons. Then that's what we'll do. Kyle's voice was firm. They can stay here at the palace if they want, or go wherever they choose when they're old enough. But nobody owns them. Nobody controls them. The nobles won't like that. Having truth seers running around free. The nobles don't get a vote. Kale's smile was sharp. That's the whole point of the restructuring. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered, still moving stiffly from his wounds, and saluted. Your Majesty, the prisoner transport has arrived. Already? Kale stood. I thought they weren't due until tomorrow. They pushed through the night, said the cargo was difficult. Kyle and Lena exchanged glances. Drax, they said simultaneously. They found him in the palace dungeons, chained to a wall in a reinforced cell. He looked even worse than before. Whatever the pup's power had done to his mind, it hadn't healed. He rocked back and forth, muttering his confessions in an endless loop. 17 witnesses, but I paid them all off. Every single one. They took the money and smiled and kept quiet while I buried the evidence in the south gardens. Third rosebush from the fountain. That's where the... Enough, Kyle said. Drax's eyes snapped to him. For a moment, clarity returned. Kale, my king, please, you have to understand. I did everything for you, for the kingdom. I made the hard choices so you wouldn't have to. You made them for yourself, for power. No, I swear, Drax broke off, his face twisting in agony. I can't lie anymore. The pups, what they did to me, I can't even lie to myself. Every time I try, I see the truth, and it's so ugly, so... He started screaming. The guards moved to restrain him, but Kyle held up a hand. Leave him. Your Majesty. I said, leave him. Kale's voice was ice. Let him live with what he's done. Every crime, every betrayal, every life he destroyed. Let that be his punishment. Lena watched Drax collapse into sobbing. Part of her felt pity. The man's mind was broken, shattered by the weight of his own sins. But a larger part remembered the dead wolf. The soldiers sent to kill newborn pups. The families destroyed by his ambition. He deserves worse, she said quietly. Yeah, Kale agreed. But this is what we have. They left Drax screaming in his cell and didn't look back. The rebuilding took months. Kale assembled a transitional government made up of military commanders, regional representatives, and a handful of minor nobles who'd survived the Truth Site purge with their integrity intact. It was messy, chaotic. Arguments broke out daily over everything from tax policy to the color of the new council chamber's curtains. But it was honest. No backroom deals, no hidden agendas. Every decision was made in public forums where anyone could attend and voice objections. It was exhausting. Lena threw herself into rebuilding the medical infrastructure. She discovered that Drax's corruption had extended to the healthcare system. Funds meant for hospitals had been diverted, medicines sold on black markets, doctors bribed to falsify death certificates. She rooted it out with the same relentless efficiency she'd used to survive the Frostmark. Every corrupt official, every fraudulent record, every lie. The pups helped. They were 6 months old now, big enough to walk the palace halls on their own, and their presence kept people honest. You couldn't lie when a truth seer might be around the next corner. Lena was working in her new office, a real office, with windows and a desk and assistants who actually listened to her, when Marcus knocked on the door. The king wants to see you, he said. Says it's important. She found Kyle in the throne room, but it looked different. The throne itself had been moved to the side, replaced with a large circular table. Around it sat the new council, 15 representatives from different regions, all chosen by popular vote. This was the first official session. Kyle gestured for Lena to join them. We're discussing the prophecy, what it means going forward. One of the representatives, a stern woman from the Northern Territories, spoke up. The pups are powerful, useful. We should formalize their role in government, make them official truth arbiters for all legal proceedings. No, Lena said immediately. The woman frowned. Excuse me? They're not tools, they're living beings with their own will. Lena looked around the table. You want to force them into service? Make them work for you? That's just another kind of slavery. We're not suggesting slavery, another representative argued. Just structure, guidelines. These creatures could prevent so much corruption if properly utilized. Listen to yourself, Kyle interrupted. Properly utilized. You're talking about them like siege engines. With respect, Your Majesty, we need safeguards. If the pups refuse to help, how do we ensure justice? The same way every other kingdom does, Lena said. Evidence, testimony, investigation. The pups can help when they choose to, but we can't depend on them. We need to build systems that work without magic truth seers. The Northern representative wasn't convinced. And if they choose not to help? If corruption creeps back in? Then we deal with it ourselves, Kyle said firmly. The pups gave us a chance to clean house. What we do with that chance is our responsibility, not theirs. The debate continued for hours. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The pups would be honored guests of the kingdom, free to live as they chose. They could assist in legal proceedings if they wished, but couldn't be compelled. And anyone who tried to force them or use them against their will would face treason charges. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than the alternative. After the session ended, Lena walked through the palace gardens, needing air and space. She found the pups there already, playing in a fountain. They were huge now, nearly full-grown, their movements graceful and powerful. The smallest one saw her and bounded over, tail wagging. It was almost as tall as her chest now. "Hey, little one," Lena said, scratching behind its ears. "Not so little anymore, huh?" The pup, not really a pup anymore, she realized, pressed its massive head against her stomach, nearly knocking her over. "Easy," she laughed. The other three approached more sedately. They developed distinct personalities over the months. The largest was protective, always positioning itself between Lena and potential threats. The second was curious, investigating everything with intense focus. The third was gentle, the one that spent hours with injured animals in the palace menagerie, somehow helping them heal faster. And the smallest, the one with the brightest golden eyes, was the leader. The others deferred to it instinctively. "Your mother would be proud," Lena told them. "You changed everything, gave us a chance to be better." The smallest one looked at her with those two intelligent eyes. Then it did something it had never done before. It spoke, not in words, but Lena heard it anyway, clear as a bell in her mind. "Thank you for saving us." She gasped. "You can—" "We always could. We were waiting until we were strong enough to do it properly." Lena's knees went weak. She sat down hard on the fountain's edge. "How long have you been able to—" "Since the convergence. Our power grew with us." The wolf tilted its head. "We heard what you said in the council, about not forcing us to serve, about letting us choose our own path." "You were listening?" "We listened to everything." A pause. "We have a question." "Okay. What do you want? For yourself? You've spent months rebuilding the kingdom, healing the sick, training new doctors. But what do you want?" Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Honestly, I don't know. I spent 5 years in exile just trying to survive. Then I spent 6 months fighting to fix what was broken. I haven't thought about after. Think about it now." She looked up at the palace, at the city beyond, at the kingdom she'd helped save. "I want to matter," she said slowly. "I want my work to mean something. I want to wake up knowing that what I do makes a difference." "You already do that." "Yeah, but I want to keep doing it. Not because I'm forced to. Not because I'm trying to prove something. Just because it's right." The wolf made a sound that might have been approval. "Then we'll help you. When you need us. When the truth needs to be seen. We'll be there. You don't have to. We choose to, just like you chose to save us." The wolf's eyes gleamed. "That's what freedom means. The right to choose. And we choose to stand with you." Lena felt tears burning her eyes. She wrapped her arms around the wolf's neck and held on tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on us. On any of us." The formal coronation anniversary happened a year after the purge. Kyle had been king for 16 years, but this was the first celebration since the truth had come out. The entire capital turned out. Streets lined with people, banners flying, music playing. But it was different from past celebrations, less formal, more genuine. Kale walked through the crowds without guards, stopping to talk to merchants and children and elderly nobles who'd survived the purge. He shook hands, listened to complaints, made promises he actually intended to keep. Lena walked beside him, the wolves at her side. They'd become a familiar sight in the capital, the healer and her truth seers. People no longer feared them. They brought their disputes, their questions, their confessions. And Lena listened, helped when she could, directed people to the new systems Kael had established. They reached the palace steps as sunset painted the sky gold and red. Kael turned to address the crowd, his voice carrying across the square. 16 years ago, I became your king. I inherited a broken kingdom, still bleeding from civil war, and I tried to fix it. But I was blind. I trusted the wrong people. Let corruption take root because I was too focused on stability to see the rot underneath. The crowd was silent, listening. A year ago, a woman I'd exiled for doing the right thing risked everything to save 4 pups that the men I'd trusted wanted dead. She could have stayed hidden, could have let them die. But she didn't. And because of her courage, the truth came out. All of it. Every ugly, shameful piece. He looked at Lena. She felt her face heat. Lena Virik showed me that stability built on lies isn't stability at all. It's just delayed collapse. She showed me that the truth, no matter how painful, is the only foundation worth building on. Kael turned back to the crowd. So today, on the anniversary of my coronation, I'm making a promise. Not to be perfect. I'm not. Not to never make mistakes. I will. But to always choose truth over comfort, justice over convenience, and to listen to the people who have the courage to tell me when I'm wrong. He gestured to Lena. Come here. She climbed the steps, heart pounding. Kael produced a medallion from his pocket. The royal seal of merit given only to those who'd performed extraordinary service to the kingdom. Lena Virik, in recognition of your courage, your sacrifice, and your unwavering commitment to doing what's right, even when it cost you everything. He placed the medallion around her neck. I name you Chief Medical Advisor to the Crown and restore your honor in full. The crowd erupted in cheers. Lena stood there, stunned, the medallion heavy and warm against her chest. Kael leaned in and whispered, You deserve this, and a lot more. I don't. Yes, you do. Stop arguing and accept the recognition. She laughed, surprised to find tears on her cheeks. Okay, I accept. Kael smiled. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He knelt. I also owe you an apology. On behalf of the council that exiled you, the system that failed you, and my own blindness that let it happen. His voice was formal but genuine. You were wronged, punished for having the courage to try when others would have played it safe. I'm sorry. Lena stared at the king kneeling before her, in front of thousands of witnesses, and felt something in her chest finally settle. Not forgiveness. That would take time. But closure. Get up, she said quietly. You're embarrassing both of us. He stood, grinning. That's the point. The celebration continued late into the night. Food, music, dancing in the streets. The wolves played with children in the square, patient and gentle despite their size. Lena found herself on a balcony overlooking it all, a cup of wine in her hand, watching the kingdom she'd helped save celebrate its rebirth. Kael joined her. Tired? Exhausted, she admitted. But good exhausted, the kind that comes from actually accomplishing something. We accomplished a lot, but there's still more to do. Always is. She took a sip of wine. The northern territories are still dealing with the fallout from the grain shortage. The eastern provinces need new leadership after we executed half their government. And the Frostmark needs someone to check on the exiles, Kael finished. Make sure they have supplies, medical care, maybe even bring some of them back if they were sent there unjustly. Lena looked at him. You want me to go back? I want you to choose. If you want to stay here, work in the capital, you're welcome to. But if you want to help the people who are where you were, he shrugged. That's valuable too. She thought about the cabin, the silence, the cold, and the people still living there, still surviving, still waiting for someone to remember they existed. I'll go, she said, but not permanently, a few months at a time. Set up supply lines, train local healers, then come back here to report and resupply. Sounds reasonable. Kale raised his cup. To new beginnings. Elena clinked her cup against his. To truth. And to stubborn healers who don't know when to quit. She laughed. Says the king who dissolved his entire government. Fair point. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the celebration below. Then Kael said, There's one more thing. Oh? He turned to face her fully. The new council structure includes provisions for advisors to have equal standing with regional representatives. Not just medical advisor, full council membership if you want it. Lena blinked. You're offering me a council seat? I'm offering you a voice, a real one, with voting rights and everything. He paused. But only if you want it. I won't force you into politics. She thought about it, about the power she'd have, the good she could do, and the bureaucracy, the endless meetings, the compromises. Can I think about it? Take all the time you need. Below, the smallest wolf howled. The others joined in, their voices rising in harmony. The crowd cheered. Lena watched them and thought about the wolf that had died to protect them. About the choice she'd made to drag that dying creature inside instead of leaving it to freeze. Everything had changed from that one decision. You know what? She said. I'll do it. The council seat. The supply runs to the Frostmark. All of it. Kale raised an eyebrow. You sure? That's a lot of responsibility. Yeah, but I spent 5 years doing nothing but surviving. I'm done with that. She met his eyes. I want to live. Really live. Make a difference. Build something that lasts. Then welcome to the council, Counselor Virek. She smiled. Don't make me regret this. No promises. 3 years passed. The kingdom stabilized. The new government found its rhythm. Corruption didn't disappear. It never would completely, but it no longer went unchecked. The wolves helped with that, appearing at trials and negotiations when truth was in question. Lena split her time between the capital and the Frostmark. She established a medical outpost in the north, trained locals to handle basic care, and brought back 17 exiles who'd been sent there unjustly. The cabin where she'd lived alone for 5 years became a supply depot and way station for travelers. Someone else lived there now, a young healer named Iris who'd volunteered to staff the outpost. Lena visited sometimes, stood in the doorway, and remembered what it had been like. The silence, the cold, the desperate fight to survive one more day. It felt like a lifetime ago. She was in the capital when the message arrived. A writer from the Western Territories, exhausted and urgent. Counselor Virek, he gasped. We need you. There's a sickness, spreading fast. People are dying and no one knows what to do. Lena was already grabbing her medical bag. What are the symptoms? Fever, seizures, black marks on the skin? Black vein toxin, Lena said immediately. Someone's poisoning the water supply. The writer's eyes widened. How do you... I've seen it before. She turned to one of her assistants. Get the king. Tell him we need soldiers in the Western Territories immediately. And get the wolves. The wolves? If someone's poisoning the water, it's deliberate. The wolves can find out who and why. Within an hour, they were riding west. Kael, Lena, the 4 wolves, a contingent of soldiers. They reached the affected town at sunset. It was chaos, people dying in the streets, families wailing over loved ones. The local healers overwhelmed and helpless. Lena took control immediately. Boil all water before drinking. No exceptions. Anyone showing symptoms gets charcoal immediately. Set up quarantine areas. She turned to Kael. We need to find the source. Where's the town's water supply? There's a well in the central square, and a river to the east. Check both. The wolves and I will handle the medical side. They worked through the night, Lena and her team treating patients, while Kael's soldiers investigated the water sources. They found it just before dawn. The well had been poisoned, deliberately. Someone had dumped enough black vein toxin to kill half the town. The wolves found the culprit trying to flee, a merchant with connections to one of the executed counselors. Revenge, he confessed under the wolves' golden gaze. Revenge for the purge that had destroyed his family's power. Kyle dealt with him, quickly, publicly. But Lena was more concerned with the survivors. She worked for 3 days straight, sleeping in snatches, treating patient after patient. The charcoal worked if administered early enough. Most people survived. Not all, but most. When it was over, when the crisis had passed and the town was recovering, Lena sat by the now cleaned well and let herself breathe. The smallest wolf, no longer small at all, massive and powerful, sat beside her. You saved them, it said in her mind. We saved them, Lena corrected, all of us. You could have stayed in the capital, could have sent others to handle this. Yeah, but where's the fun in that? The wolf's laughter was warm in her mind. You're still the same person who dragged my mother inside during a blizzard. Stubborn and too stupid to quit? Brave, and unwilling to let people suffer when you can help. Lena leaned against the wolf's shoulder. She'd be proud of you, all of you, what you've become. She'd be proud of you too. They sat in silence as the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Then Kael approached, looking as exhausted as Lena felt. The council wants you back in the capital. There's a dispute over medical regulations in the southern provinces. Lena groaned. Can't they handle it without me? They could, but they'd make a mess of it. He offered her a hand. Come on, counselor. Duty calls. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. You know, when I dragged that wolf inside, I was just trying to save one life. I didn't sign up for all this. Yes, you did, Kael said. You just didn't know it yet. Lena looked at the wolves, at the recovering town, at the kingdom that had been broken and was slowly, painfully healing. And she smiled. Yeah, she said. I guess I did. Sat. 5 years after the purge, on the anniversary of the convergence, they held a ceremony at the cathedral in Greystone. A memorial. For the mother wolf who had died protecting her pups. For the soldiers who'd sacrificed themselves to expose the truth. For everyone who'd fallen in the fight to rebuild the kingdom. Lena stood before the memorial stone, a simple marker engraved with the wolf's image, and placed a wreath of winter roses. Thank you, she said quietly, for trusting me, for giving me a purpose, for changing everything. The 4 wolves stood behind her, silent and solemn. The crowd that had gathered, hundreds of people from across the kingdom, bowed their heads in respect. Kael stepped forward and placed his own wreath. To those who gave everything for truth, may we honor their sacrifice by building something worthy of it. The ceremony continued, songs, prayers, stories. When it ended, Lena found herself walking through Greystone streets, remembering the night she'd arrived half dead with 4 newborn pups. So much had changed. The kingdom had a new government, new systems, new hope, and she had a new life, purpose, a place where she belonged. She wasn't the same woman who'd lived alone in the Frostmark, waiting to die. She was Lena Vierik, chief medical advisor, council member, truth-bearer, partner to a king who'd chosen to burn down everything corrupt rather than let it stand, friend to 4 wolves who saw through every lie and chose to stand for justice, survivor, healer, fighter, home. That night, as she and Kael rode back toward the capital with the wolves running alongside, she looked up at the twin moons and smiled. The convergence had changed everything, given them a chance to be better. And they'd taken it, not perfectly, not smoothly, but with courage and determination and the stubborn refusal to give up that had kept her alive in the Frostmark. What are you thinking? Kael asked. Lena looked at him. At this man who'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over stability, the hard right over the easy wrong. I'm thinking, she said, that I'm glad I opened the door that night. Me too. The wolves howled in agreement, their voices rising toward the stars. And Lena Vierik, who'd once been sent to the frozen north to die, rode toward her future with her head held high and truth burning bright in her heart. The kingdom had been broken. Together, they'd forged it anew. And this time, they'd built it on a foundation that would last. Truth, justice, courage, and the unshakable belief that one person choosing to do the right thing, no matter the cost, could change the world.